Hey guys, I'm Will from Tested.
And I'm Norm from Tested.
Norm, I love pizza.
I like pizza too. I'm
pizza?
confident in saying that I like pizza. I love pizza.
Everybody loves pizza.
Well, what type of pizza are you talking about?
All pizza. I like Chicago deep dish. I like the thin crust New York stuff. I like the Italian Neapolitan style that's just flat with some stuff on top. I like all pizza.
Not Pizza Hut pizza.
You know what? There's a place for a Pizza Hut Supreme fried dough pizza.
But you also like making your own pizza.
I love making my own pizza.
So how do you do it?
Well, the trick with making pizza at home is that most home ovens don't get anywhere near hot enough to make pizza like a pizza oven does, or a wood, whether it's a wood-fired kind of those igloo ovens you see at fancy pizza places, or even just like the thin slot that's your typical pizzeria pizza oven.
And you're talking about making pizza from scratch, not heating up frozen pizza.
I am not talking about making even DiGiorno, where you take the unassembled components and jam them in the oven. I'm talking about taking raw dough, putting it on a piece of wood or steel, sliding it directly onto a hot surface. And the reason you want a hot surface, the trick is most ovens at home get to 500, maybe 550 Fahrenheit, whereas most pizza ovens range somewhere between 600 or 700 degrees Fahrenheit and 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on whether you're talking about a wood fire or like a pizzeria style oven.
So how even the temperature is inside the oven, it's not so important, it's just a flat surface?
Well, both make a difference, but I mean, the idea with a pizzeria style oven is that the pizza cooks in a very short period of time. If you're talking about 1,000 degrees, you'll slide the pizza in, it'll be in there for 30 to 90 seconds, you'll pull it out and it'll be done.
It's a wood fire stove.
Yeah, literally, it's in there, you turn around, you make a beer, you grab your peel and pull that pizza back out.
The Costco style pizza through the conveyor belt.
No, that conveyor belt makes me sad.
Okay, all right.
Pizza Hut uses the real thing, or at least they used to, I don't know if they do it anymore. So the challenge then becomes, how can you mimic that kind of fast heat transfer at home without building a pizza oven in your backyard or getting a big expensive pizza oven for your kitchen?
Right.
And the traditional way that you've done that is with what you have in front of you. That's a pizza stone. I think that one I bought from Williams-Sonoma probably close to 10 years ago. It's essentially a piece of fireplace brick. That thing has probably had close to 1,000 pizzas made on it, if I had to guess, over the last 10 years. And it does a good job. The reason you use a stone, when you're talking about making pizza, you want something that will both hold a lot of heat internally and then also transfer that heat relatively quickly. And compared to putting a pizza on, say, a pizza screen, which is one of those, it looks like a pizza pan with some holes in it, that's much better. That will transfer heat into that dough a lot faster. And the result is that you get a thinner, crisp portion of the crust and more kind of chewy, delightful inside.
And it doesn't need to be super thick.
Doesn't the stone.
The pizza.
The pizza. No, you can do a thin pizza, it'll be fine.
So where does this live in your house when you're not making pizza?
Honestly, that thing just stays in my oven. So one of the things that's nice about a stone, or the steel that we'll talk about in a minute, is that adding more thermal capacity to your oven helps even out the heat in your oven all the time. Because the thing most people don't know is most ovens have hot and cold spots. It's why when you're making, say, a cake, you rotate the cake midway through it so it ends up cooking evenly. And this will help even that stuff out. Now, it does transfer heat a lot faster, so you don't want to put things that you're used to cooking via air conduction directly on that. If you put like a cookie sheet with some cookies on it, the bottom's going to get real weird.
On top of this?
On top of that.
What if you have separate layers?
If you have a rack, you put it on the rack above it, everything's great.
Okay, so it does actually improve the overall functionality. It can improve.
It can improve, especially if you have a cheap oven. If you have a nice oven, it probably will make less difference.
You don't need to take it out.
You don't need to take it out. You can if you want. Some people just put it on the very bottom of the oven, assuming you don't have like electronic burners or something down there. If you just have a flat metal piece on the bottom, you can put it on there and it'll rest. Other people over the years, it's a little bit expensive. Those are usually $25 to $50, depending on where you buy them.
Okay.
I think I got that for $35 with a peel at Williams-Sonoma. Maintenance on that is really simple. All you do is don't get it wet. If you get it wet, the next time you heat it up, it has a chance to crack and explode.
Right.
You don't want that.
In your oven, especially the cleanup's bad.
It's a bad cleanup.
In terms of making the pizza, do you need to do something different with the preheating?
With that, you need to preheat it. So you want something that holds a lot of heat. In order to get that to the point that it holds a lot of heat, it has to warm up for a really long time.
Okay.
Usually I start the oven 45 minutes or an hour before I want to actually put the first pizza in.
Wow.
In testing these two things, I found that the best results happened after 90 minutes with the stone. So, it takes a long time. It's not a whole lot of gas. Like I looked at my gas meter to see how much I was actually using. It's hardly anything. It's like 20 cents worth of gas probably.
And you're still maxing up your oven.
And it's the hottest you can make your oven. Yeah. Hotter the better. A lot of people, if you don't want to do the stone, go to Lowe's or Home Depot and buy those yellow bricks that go in the back of fireplaces. They're food safe for the most part. You want to make sure that the ones you get are. But you can put them just along the bottom of your oven or on one of the racks in your oven and get the same effect with a larger space. That's a little bit small for some people.
It's kind of like a cast iron skillet for your pizza.
Kind of. Now this is actually like a cast iron skillet for your pizza. So this is something that's relatively new. This is a baking steel. It is a 1/4-inch piece that's 14 inches this way and 16 inches this way of, I think, A36 steel. A36 just means it's a particular alloy with some amount of carbon and all that stuff. But it's food safe. There's a guy named Andrus Langston, read Modernist Cuisine, worked in a steel yard and was like, hey, because Modernist years ago, we saw Scott Heimendinger, who works for Modernist Cuisine years ago. He showed us a steel that he had made on his grill and showed us how to make grill pizzas, make a normal just charcoal grill, I guess, hit 700, 800 degrees, which is pretty tricky. Yeah. The steel was the interesting part of that demo to me. And I went and looked for a piece of steel at my local metal shop. It was going to be kind of expensive. I was worried about having to clean it because it had oil and grease that is used to machine stuff and to forge stuff on it. And I ended up just pulling back because it seemed like a hassle. Andrus Langston came up, read the same thing we read basically, and said, "Hey, I work in a steel place. I can make this.
You can cut the bunch of steel, make it sanitary, and sell it."
Exactly. They pre-coat these things with oil, so they're a little bit seasoned to begin with. You want, as you can see, like this is well used. We've made probably a couple dozen pizzas on this at this point.
Functionally, very similar to this.
It's the same size, more or less. This is a little bit smaller.
The way you use it.
The way you use it is the same. You put it in your oven, you cook pizza on it.
Now this is already kind of heavy. This is, let's say,
that's like 10 or 12 pounds.
10,
probably.
yeah.
This is 18. They make them bigger and thicker. So the reason the steel is more interesting than the stone is both have a high heat capacity. Steel actually will hold, per mass, will hold more heat than the stone will. And it also has a much higher heat conductivity. So you know how you can touch a piece of hot glass and it burns much more than if you touch a piece of hot, say, bread? Okay. You can pick up a piece of hot bread, hold it for a second, put it down, but a piece of hot glass is the same temperature, will burn the hell out of your hand. And if you put your hand in hot water, it's going to be even worse.
Yes.
This conducts heat much better than the stone does. So what that means is when you put your uncooked pizza on the steel, it's going to cook much, much faster. The heat from the steel moves into the dough much faster, and you end up with a much faster cook time, which is desirable when you're making pizzas at home.
Because it stores more heat, do you need to preheat that longer?
No, you need to preheat it less long because it conducts better.
So it absorbs the heat
it'll absorb the heat faster. And then you do, like, the longer you let it preheat, again, the better. There's a cutoff point. I found that to be about an hour, maybe 45 minutes. Okay. It's difficult to say for certain. The other nice thing about this is that the kind of downtime between pizzas is a little bit lower. That one you kind of want to give maybe 10 or 15 minutes in the oven. It doesn't have to be that long.
How many pizzas are you making?
It depends how many people are coming over.
All right.
Yeah, thin crust pizza doesn't go that far in terms of food. I'm going to put this down because it's really heavy. But yeah,
comes with a pouch.
It comes with it. Well, you can buy a pouch separate. It's like 15 or 20 bucks. It's unnecessary.
Okay.
Unless you're going to take it in and out of the oven a lot. They sent this to us, and they sent the pouch for shipping.
So is this also something you can keep in the oven?
I keep this in the oven. It works fine. We'll talk about that stuff in a minute, because there's some maintenance that goes with this that you don't necessarily have with the stone. The neat thing about this is that literally the crust that you get from this is the crunchy part is very, very thin because it cooks very quickly. And then the dough inside, the bready part inside that crust, is very tender compared to the stone, especially if you're using the stone before it's all the way heated. When you let the stone get all the way up to maximum heat capacity, it does a pretty comparable job. And you see this, Joey came down to the house and we cooked pizza for 3 hours the other day. And by the end of that period, we had both the stone and the steel in the oven at the same time. By the end of that period, the stone had kind of caught up. But it definitely takes longer for the stone to get the heat capacity that you want to kind of transfer the crust very quickly.
If you're just making one pizza for one night, that's more efficient.
This is ready to go in 30 minutes for one pizza, no problem.
So how much is that?
This is $80.
Whoa.
So it's a little bit more expensive. I think they do free shipping, so I thought it would be expensive to ship because it weighs 20 pounds.
It's a lot of DiGiorno.
It is a lot of DiGiornos. But the upshot is that you can make restaurant quality pizza at home.
Now this isn't like, is it the equivalent of then the brick oven?
Brick oven's a different thing. So the brick oven, you can get to 1,000 degrees. A brick oven, I would love to build an igloo-style brick oven in my backyard. And there's lots of plans on the internet. It's not difficult. It's time-consuming. It takes a fair amount of space. But the idea on a brick oven is that you have like a 6x6 or 5x5 circle that you put burning wood in the back. It has a little bit of a chimney in the front and a door in the front. And by putting the wood in the back, you can heat it to 800 or 1,000 degrees very quickly. And then most people make pizzas at the high end of that temperature, and then they'll put some bread in, and they'll roast some chickens. And like as it cools, you go through different phases of cooking. This is an intermediary if you're not ready to go to that level. And you know, because of the heat. The heat transfer, you can make a good pizza. It's not hard to make pizza. Like the steps, the places that you can make mistakes are the same, whether you're using the stone, the bricks in the oven, or a steel.
And you can buy dough, pre-made good dough at a local Whole Foods or a pizza place.
Making dough is really easy, but yeah, you can go to a local pizza place, you can go to Whole Foods, you can go to Trader Joe's if you have Trader Joe's. Mm-hmm. All of those places sell dough. You probably want to call the pizza place because some places sell and some people don't. Making dough is really easy. There was a great article in the New York Times last month that detailed the Roberta's recipe. Sam Sifter, who's one of the New York Times food writers, talked to the guys at Roberta's, and they showed like how they make their fancy Brooklyn hipster dough. And like that has since become my new favorite dough recipe. It is a amazing dough, and the secret to that is that you let it proof. So instead of making the dough, put it in the mixer, letting it rise for an hour, and then chucking it on, you put it in the fridge and let it ferment for another 24 hours, and that makes the carbohydrates a little bit more complex and breaks down the sugars and stuff like that. You end up getting a really crunchy, delightful crust when you do that.
Brooklyn hipster dough.
Brooklyn hipster dough.
Brooklyn hipster pizza.
So making the pizza pretty easy, right? You preheat the oven. We talked about that. Mm-hmm. You want
hour.
30 minutes to an hour,
90
hour
minutes.
and a half, hour to 90 minutes, depending on how picky you want to be. You flour everything. So you stretch out the dough, and you assemble the pizza. You flour the surface that you're working on. You flour your hands. You flour the peel, the thing you're going to slide the pizza in on. You flour the bottom of the pizza if there's any wet spots. You want to get rid of all the wet spots so that you can kind of slide that dough on the counter, right?
Do you have a recommendation for a peel?
I've been testing a bunch of different stuff. I used a wooden peel for a long time, but they tend to be a little thick. Yeah. And when you're dealing with a thick crust, it's not a problem to get that in and out. When you're dealing with a very thin crust, and when I'm using this lets me do incredibly thin crust. You need something that's a little thinner. So I've been trying out some steel. Some thinner steel peels, and they're a little bit trickier because they don't hold the flour as well, and they slide. You think they'd slide better, but there's a knack to them. Okay. I'll have a story about that on the site at some point in the future. We'll do a show and tell or something. You can use whatever toppings you want. When you make pizza, just take a bunch of stuff that you like, slap it on the pizza. We have friends who have kids that are, let's say, 8 to 20. They bring them over. It's a good family activity. Making pizza is good for everyone. You can use all sorts of sauces and cheeses, all that stuff. It's all good.
Okay.
The only thing I would say is smaller pizzas are easier than bigger pizzas.
Okay.
And less toppings.
Personal size?
Maybe a split ski for 2 people. Less toppings. The tendency, if you're me at least, is to put more stuff on than you should. Mm-hmm. So less sauce, less cheese, less toppings.
It goes a long way.
Goes a long way. Sliding the pizza into the oven is the hard part. Like literally, you have to put the peel in. Again, every step along the way. Every time you move the dough, make sure that the pizza moves. I think they call that keeping it honest in the business, but I don't know for sure. So you want to make sure that the pizza is wiggly on whatever surface you have it on. If it's not, you need more flour. When you slide it in, what you're going to do is put the pizza all the way in the back, and I'll show you here. So instead of like trying to shoot the pizza off. That's not going to happen because as soon as the dough hits the surface, it's going to start to stick. And it won't release until it gets almost cooked. So you want to put the peel all the way in the back and then just kind of shimmy it off and almost pull the peel out from underneath the pizza and not slide the pizza off the peel.
It's like putting a screen protector on an iPhone.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a similar move. And you want to come in at a little bit of an angle so it tends to slide more. If you have trouble getting your pizza to release, try a little bit of a heartier dough, something with a little more gluten. Buy a whole shitload of dough from Trader Joe's or Whole Foods. Usually, I think Trader Joe's dough is $1 a bag, and that's 2 pizzas worth.
Wow.
So you can make a lot of mistakes at $1 a bag and do a lot of practice. If you're having trouble using just all-purpose flour to slide, using a coarser flour like semolina, which you can get at pretty much every grocery store now, or even cornmeal will help it roll off better. The flour, when it's the bigger, coarser, almost acts like little ball bearings that the pizza just kind of rolls off of.
Does it affect the flavor of the pizza and the taste?
The cornmeal and the semolina, yeah, you can definitely taste them on the outside. I like a flour dough, but when you're learning the technique, then using a coarser flour isn't a problem. And if you have one that just won't come off, like this one, then just fuck it. Flip it over, close it up, make it a calzone. Maybe brush a little bit of olive oil on the top midway through the cooking, and it's still delicious. You can't really mess up pizza.
Wow. And you're not pulling your tray out or anything.
No.
So everything is in the oven.
So yeah, when it's in the oven, you put it in the oven. With the steel, it usually cooks for, let's say, 6 minutes on the outside. If your oven gets a little bit hotter, some of the newer electric ovens especially will go up to 600 Fahrenheit. Then that time cuts down a lot. If it's taking much longer than 6 minutes, you probably put too much stuff on the pizza. So, just keep that in mind.
What do you look at when you're looking into the oven? Is it cheese bubbling? What do you look at?
Cheese bubbling is always good. You want your toppings to look done. But really the way you can tell is when you start to see black spots on the crust. Like
on the edge of the crust.
Both the top, the edge. If you have any sauce that maybe spilled over the edge of the crust, then that'll turn black. That's always a good sign. And then you can also slide your peel up under there and just take a peek to see how it's doing. You don't want to cook it so long that it's like solid and hard, but you also don't want to bring it off raw. So,
is there a problem with exposing the oven and the stone too much air when you have
This is a good point. The less you open the oven, the better off you are. Every time you open that oven, heat goes out. The more you keep it closed, the better off you're going to be. So try to avoid peaking if you can.
Sounds pretty simple.
I mean, literally the only hard part is getting the pizza in the oven. And if you're worried about that, you can buy a pizza pan, and it's training wheels for you when you're getting started. That's pretty much it. Maintenance, like I said, maintenance on the stone is never get it wet. If something gets caked onto it, exactly.
Never get this wet.
Never feed it after midnight. Mm-hmm. If you sometimes you'll spill cheese or something off onto it. Just let it cool down and then scrape it off with a spatula. It's no big deal.
Okay.
Same thing over here. On the baking steel, you want to have you kind of treat it almost like you do cast iron. So when you get a cast iron pan. Ideally, the best way to get a cast iron pan is to go to an antique store and buy one that's 80 years old and somebody has a good season already on it. If you have to put a season on it, you put it in the oven at 350 degrees with some vegetable oil or peanut oil or probably vegetable oil for this, I would think. This comes with oil already applied. The first couple of times I used it, I did just kind of scraped it off and rubbed a little bit of oil on it, and it has a pretty good season at this point. I'm only using one side for pizza right now. The other side is relatively virgin. I can show you.
That's what it looks like.
That's what it looks like. You never want to let this air dry. You never want to put it in the oven when it's wet and turn the heat on. You want to dry this by hand when you use it, or else it'll rust because it is steel and it has the capacity to rust. Just like
so when you're done making the pizza, just let it cool and then
let it cool.
Wipe it down.
If you got stuff on it, you can knock it loose. If you don't, it's not going to hurt anything. As long as it stays dry, everything's fine. Now they have, like I said, this one is $80. I can't remember how much the case is. I think it was like $10 extra. Like I said, the case seems unnecessary to me. I literally tuck this into a space. I have a table in my kitchen, and when I'm not using them and I need the space in the oven, I just slide them between the wall and the thing. They're really hard to mess up. They have a couple different models of this. Mostly they vary on thickness. So I'm going to look specifically here. I must not have written it down. Oh well. There's a big one that's half-inch thick. This is a quarter. There's a medium-sized one that's the Modernist Cuisine brand that's 3/8 inch thick, so it's splits the difference. and they'll do custom sizes if you ask them to.
So what's the advantage of thicker?
More heat capacity. So thicker will hold more heat. The other big advantage of the thicker one, and they have a new model coming out soon that I saw on Serious Eats, where they're going to take one side, leave it with the pizza finish. The other side will have a polished, smooth surface like a griddle with a grease trap around the edge, so that you can take it out of the oven, flip it over, put it on your burners on the top, and make everything from burgers and steaks to like traditional diner eggs and bacon and stuff like that. If I were buying one, I would wait until they have that one available. That seems like an absolute slam dunk to me, especially if you have a 6-burner stove that you can cover 3 or 4 burners.
It's pretty heavy to maneuver around. 18 pounds, 30 pounds for the full-size one.
The big half-inch one weighs 30 pounds. That's ridiculous. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You don't want to drop this on your foot. If you have small children, you want to be careful carrying it around them.
There's no easy way to grip it. No grip points to it.
You don't want to, most importantly, learn this the hard way. Don't try to move it when it's hot, because it is very hot. It conducts heat very well. Even if you have a big, thick pair of oven mitts, you're going to feel it much quicker than you think. So if you have it in your oven and it's hot, just leave it in your oven. It'll be fine.
Is it bulletproof?
I don't know. It's 1/4-inch steel. I don't know if it's probably a jacketed slug would go right through it like butter, but I don't know. I'm thinking I might take this over to Adam's sometime and put it on the mill and see if we can polish up the other side and cut a grease trap and just see what we can do. Like I said, the thing that they're providing is convenience. You can go to the metal, if you have a good metal shop around you, you can get a 1/4-inch thick piece of steel. I think the modernist people recommend A36. You'll want to do a really good job getting whatever grease and stuff off of it. You want to season it with oil, put it in the oven, do all that stuff. Like, you can totally make this yourself. Mm-hmm. This is $80 of convenience and support, basically. So that's it. That's the baking steel. You can get it at bakingsteel.com. I think it's really neat.
Cool.
I super duper like it.
The point is to encourage people to try making their own pizzas.
I think making pizza is a
Not
good
very
thing
difficult
for everyone and families to do.
Yeah.
And if you just want to get started, you don't have to spend $80 on a steel. You can go and get $15 worth of fireplace bricks from Home Depot and a $5 or $10 peel from Amazon and be good to go in a getting started way. And then you can upgrade to this later if you think you need it.
Brooklyn Hipster Pizza.
Pizza. We'll see you guys later.
Bye.